we have to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict. And we also have to manage it responsibly.
No drama, no delay, no government shutdown. That's our goal.
The date of the New Hampshire First in the Nation presidential primary will be January 23rd. That date complies with our state statute.
President Biden held a news conference following his meeting with the president of China, Xi Jinping. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang has the latest.
Robert, heading into this summit, President Biden said he would define it as a success if communications resumed between the U.S. and China, especially with regard to the two militaries. And so that is exactly what he was able to announce after a 4-hour summit with China's leader Xi Jinping. He also said that the two leaders agreed to crack down on the illegal production of fentanyl by targeting the Chinese companies that supply and export the ingredients that are used to make it and then flood into the southern border and make its way here to the U.S., which has had a profound impact on so many. The president and Xi Jinping talked about a host of other issues as well, including how to use artificial intelligence and work together to pave the road ahead as it continues to develop at a rapid speed, as well as the two conflicts that continue to play out in Ukraine and Gaza. He did make some news when he insisted that there was U.S. intelligence that shows that Hamas is operating under the Al-Shifa hospital, which of course the IDF has now raided. And I did ask him whether he believed that operation was justified, because earlier this week he also said that hospitals must be protected. And he said this was a very different situation from Israel just going in blind, guns blazing. He said this was very carefully planned out and that Israel had taken several steps to protect civilians. And so this was a long day for President Biden, but again, when he leaves this summit, he will be able to say that he achieved his main goals coming in, which was to reestablish communications with China. Robert?
Weijia Jiang, thank you. More than 90 House Republicans voted against the bill to keep the government funded. We analyzed the potential political ramifications for the new speaker. You're streaming America Decides.
When are my Republican colleagues going to put up or shut up? I didn't come here for second place. I didn't come here for more excuses. I didn't come here to have the Speaker of the House assume the position and in 17 days pass a continuing resolution off the floor of this House through suspension of the rules.
Calm times on Capitol Hill. Welcome back to America Decides. That was Texas Republican Congressman Chip Roy, who was one of the 93 Republican House members to oppose Speaker Johnson's bill to avoid a government shutdown. Sabrina Rodriguez and Kadia Goba join us now. Sabrina is a national political reporter for The Washington Post. Kadia is a political reporter for Semaphore. Thank you both so much for being here. We really appreciate it. So there's a lot of fallout on Capitol Hill based on Speaker Johnson's decision to move forward with this particular legislation. We'll begin with you. What's the political cost, if any, for the new speaker?
I mean, for the new speaker, you know, the fact is at least he has a future now. He did this. We've averted a government shutdown at the moment. But, you know, he worked with Democrats for this. He got the votes from Democrats. And what does that cost him with the more ultra-conservative side of his own party? And, you know, as we head to January, we have another battle coming. But at least for now, it's okay. The holidays, Thanksgiving, and that part is handled without having to deal with a shutdown.
Yeah, and these are some of the same concerns that brought a motion to vacate or ousted Kevin McCarthy. So obviously there's concern whether or not the same thing is going to happen with Johnson. But like a piece I wrote earlier today, I think he gets some grace because he has a lot of conservative backing and people just genuinely trust him. Even after the vote yesterday to pass the stopgap, many people said, you know, I don't like this. I don't like the stopgap, but I'm still okay with the speaker, so time will tell. Chip Roy says they're coming back and they're going to fight, so we'll see in a few weeks how that turns out.
Is Congressman Roy angry about the speaker or angry just about the situation? Seems to be a bit of a difference.
It seems like right now it's about the situation. You know, the reality is that Johnson just took the speakership and he doesn't have all the personal baggage and drama that Kevin McCarthy had on the job. So there isn't that level of animus between Johnson and that right flank of the party. Again, it's early. He's only been in this position for, days at this point. So, as time passes is what we'll kind of see where that grace period ends with that right flank of the party.
And are we learning anything about how January is going to look? Scott McFarlane was saying that's going to be a pressure point. Is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell building a relationship with the new speaker? Are Senate Republicans in any way simpatico with what's going on in the House?
That's not clear, but I can tell you there is a lot of work to be done. Republicans or Congress in general in the House, they can't even pass these appropriations bills. Remember, the big promise was to get 12 of them over the line. But there's been all kind of angst between now. We see the right flank and the moderates going to bat and opposing some of the rules on these bills. So before they even get to the Senate side for their conference, the House is going to have to pass these out of committee and then off the floor.
Let's turn to the 2024 presidential race. New Hampshire has now set its primary date for late January, but the Democrats still have South Carolina as their first formal primary. Does New Hampshire matter for the Democrats? Dean Phillips, the Minnesota congressman, is running in that race.
Yeah, he's definitely made it a focal point, and he, in his first event in New Hampshire was talking about how, Democrats should keep it in New Hampshire and they should be paying attention to voters in New Hampshire. But what we're seeing is the Biden campaign and administration and Democratic leaders at large saying, well, no, we're going to go with what was agreed with. We're going to go with what the Biden administration wants. I mean, Biden has said he's willing to not be on the ballot in New Hampshire to uphold the schedule that he wanted and endorsed. So at this point, it's a mixed bag of we're seeing, Dean Phillips really leaning in on New Hampshire to send a message in his long shot campaign, but the Biden administration holding on that they're not going to focus as much on New Hampshire.
What about on the Republican side in New Hampshire? Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was in Washington today. He's making a play there. Does he have a chance to make a surprise in New Hampshire and get some traction, or is this really Trump country?
I think it's Trump country. I am surprised. I mean, Chris Christie has been, running as the former or the traditional Republican. We see that doesn't work, and we see this by some of the people that have dropped out, like Pence, like Tim Scott. So I think, I don't know, I'm not really sure what his play is here, but I will point out that I know Hakeem Jeffries and a group of Democrats are going there to New Hampshire for a dinner. So I thought that was interesting because I hadn't noticed that, or I'd seen that in previous presidential runs. And
Congressman Phillips of Minnesota, he's running in the Democratic primary, but President Biden faces challenges from the left, running as independents, Dr. Cornel West, and also Robert F. Kennedy Jr. RFK Jr. has just won some endorsements from some high-profile athletes like Aaron Rodgers and others. Could that have any impact on his campaign, which remains this outsider campaign, independent campaign?
Right now, it appears that Republicans are more concerned about RFK's run. When you look at who his top donors have been, it's historically Republican donors. And in terms of being on the campaign trail and talking to voters, it seems that, RFK's, vax, skeptic, anti-vax messaging resonates more with the Republican Party. And we've even seen, after he announced that he was moving from Democrat to an independent bid, Republicans kind of scrambling and saying, oh, we liked this when it was that he was running as a Democrat against Biden, but now we're kind of worried that we might lose some support.
And there was also some reporting from my colleague Shelby Talcott where Trump's camp is, strategizing around RFK. So I think if they're making a concerted effort, that there's some concern there.
And final thing, quickly from both of you, what's at the top of your notebook? What are you watching for the rest of the week?
It's voter apathy and the exhaustion that we're hearing from voters, whether it's about the government shutdown and it now not happening, but it pending, and kind of hearing them talk about candidates, which I think will be far more than 1 week that we deal with that.
I really want to know how much the fatigue in Congress is impacting members and if they're going to have this appetite to go after Johnson or cut up a little more when they come back after Thanksgiving.
I don't know how many more speaker votes we can do here in Washington. Oh, please. Sabrina Rodriguez and Kadia Goba, thank you very much for being here. The battle over abortion rights is becoming a crucial issue in this campaign season. We'll explore that next. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. President Biden is making access to abortion a key pillar of his re-election campaign. And at a fundraiser last night, he said this, quote, "The only reason a fundamental right has been stripped away from the American people for the first time in American history is because of Donald Trump." Those sharp critiques, though, are not keeping former President Trump from sharing his own position on the issue. Here's a new ad. He's running in Iowa.
Trump nominated conservative judges, leading to Roe v. Wade being overturned and returned to the states. Help make America great again. Caucus for President Trump on January 15th.
Joining us now, CBS News campaign reporter Olivia Rinaldi and CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez. Thank you so much for being here at the table with America Decides. We'll begin with abortion. We just heard from former President Trump and President Biden in their respective remarks. Is this issue front and center on the campaign trail when you're covering the Republican race?
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. This is front and center for not only the Republican candidates, but for voters as well. And sources that I have within Trump's orbit have told me that they understand this is a really difficult issue for him in 2024. As we saw last week in Virginia, voters overwhelmingly rejected any candidates or provisions, especially in Ohio, that would restrict abortion access for people. They flat out rejected it. So Donald Trump knows that, and that's what he's playing to. He kind of has this twofold approach. When he's speaking to GOP voters in the primary, he is their champion. He's boastful. He's the one who overturned Roe versus Wade by appointing justices to the Supreme Court who delivered it back to the people in the states. But when he's talking to more moderate people and reporters, so Univision in his interview last week, he takes this approach of vagueness. He won't say how many weeks he supports. He won't say 15 weeks. He won't say 20 weeks. And it's that vagueness that really scares Democrats and scares Joe Biden. You heard last night what he said about abortion and that Donald Trump is the person who brought it back to the states. He sees that as a winning issue for him in 2024.
It's interesting because he knows perhaps that it's driving out so much turnout for the Democrats, bringing out some non-voters for the Democrats. And speaking of issues that drives turnout, immigration has always been one, especially for former President Trump, in terms of getting working voters to get behind his past campaigns. How is immigration, Camilo, featuring in his campaign this time around? When you closely watch his speeches, what do you notice about the cadence, about the framing of the issue?
Well, certainly former President Donald Trump has made immigration a top campaign issue. Yet again, he has promised to launch the largest deportation operation in U.S. history, for example. If reelected, he has promised to implement ideological screenings for new immigrants, to deny birthright citizenship to the American-born children of unauthorized immigrants. And he has also refused to rule out reinstating that infamous family separation policy along the U.S.-Mexico border. So it has been a prominent theme again in his campaign. But President Biden's campaign team is telling us now that they see an opportunity here to portray these proposals as draconian, extreme, and radical. And they believe this effort to highlight these proposals, including the mass deportations, will allow them to create some ground here to go on the offensive on this issue, which many perceive to be a political challenge for President Biden due to the record levels of migration along the U.S.-Mexico border and the record numbers of illegal crossings there. And they believe that this effort by Trump to tout this issue will turn off Latino voters and other key voters in 2024, such as moderates and independents. So they're seeking in many ways to flip the script on this issue, but we cannot dismiss the fact that this is one of President Biden's worst polling issues. We had a poll back in September that found that 66% of likely voters disapproved of his handling on immigration, including 71% of Latino voters. And I think that's due to the fact of the situation along the border, but also the fact that many Latino voters feel like he has not taken enough actions on this issue, including to legalize the undocumented population here.
So just in the final minute or two here, when you look at the issue of abortion, speaking of the word script, after what happened in Virginia, you've covered Virginia so much, Are Republicans going to start talking less about this on the campaign trail? Have you noticed anything with some of the other candidates beyond Trump?
It'll be interesting to see if they cover it more going forward. It is a losing issue for them, though, and Biden has seized on that.
And they also think it drives turnout on their own side.
They do. They really do.
That's why some of these evangelicals are saying, keep talking about it.
Right.
And they don't like when Trump doesn't talk about it.
No, they don't like when he doesn't talk about it, and they've pushed him, and sources I've spoken to have said that they've pushed him privately to really define where he is on this issue. You know, Governor DeSantis proudly talks about his 6-week abortion ban, or at least did until he realized that it wasn't really playing that well with some voters. So then he backtracked and said, well, you know, I could be for a 15-week federal ban. There's movement on both of them. I really don't think they know what's going to get voters to turn out, or they know where, you know, the electorate kind of feels that they're standing on this issue. So I think that will be something we'll be tracking in the coming weeks and months ahead in the primaries.
We certainly will. And on immigration, what should we be tracking? It's on the Democrats in particular, in just a minute or so.
A longstanding Democratic Party on this issue has been providing a pathway to U.S. citizenship for Dreamers and other longtime unauthorized immigrants here in the U.S. President Biden has not been able to convince Congress to change the immigration laws and to provide that pathway, and that will continue to be a hurdle for him to overcome, to galvanize those Latinos who obviously he needs in 2024.
Olivia Rinaldi, Camilo Montoya Galvez, we really appreciate you stopping by America Decides, and that does it for us today. You can stream America Decides Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.